Okay, so the Dhamma for today is called the Apannaka Patipadā from the Apannaka Sutta, Anguttara Nikaya Book of Threes, Ratakara Wagga Sutta number 6. Apannaka means faultless. Apannaka probably means something like that which has a problem, from panha. So Apannaka would be something that is problematic, flawed. Apannaka is flawless. The Buddha said this practice, the Apannaka Patipadā, is a practice. If you start, a person who practices in this way has started on the path to the destruction of the asava, the defilements, basically. So the Apannaka Patipadā is 3 parts. We're in the Book of Threes. The first part is indriyesu. Indriya samvara. The first part is indriya samvara. The second one is, indriya samvara means guarding the senses. The second one, bhojane matanyuta, moderation in regards to food. And number 3, jagaryang anuyuto, being dedicated to wakefulness. Jagaryang anuyuta. This teaching is something that my teacher, our head teacher, often brought up. It's like many of the Buddha's teachings, like the core of the Buddha's teaching, it's very simple. There's not a lot to it. And it shows again how simple the path really is. The path is not easy, but simplicity is a feature of the path. That the complicating of the path is a flaw. Someone who makes the practice more complicated than it needs to be has made a flaw in their practice. It's really remarkable how these 3 things are the essence of what right practice means. Guarding the senses. Guarding the senses is a way of describing proper practice. There's 5 ways of guarding the senses. Guarding through precepts, patimokkha samvara. Guarding through mindfulness, sati samvara. Guarding through knowledge, jnana samvara. Guarding through patience, khanti samvara. And guarding through effort, virya samvara. Guarding through precepts means you want to do something, you want to, perhaps you want something so much, you crave something so you'll steal it. Or for monks, things like you wanting to eat in the afternoon, but because of the rule you don't. Having rules can be valuable. It's of course a sort of a band-aid solution, or a stopgap solution. It's not the ultimate way to free yourself from craving, but it can help you in the meantime. If you have confidence and conviction and dedication to the rules, that's a way of guarding your mind. Sati samvara is the core of our practice. Sati samvara is a very special kind of guarding, because you're not preventing yourself from doing or seeing or hearing, or you're not preventing anything from impinging upon the senses. Sati samvara is the practice of facing everything, good, bad, desirable, undesirable. It's a very special kind of practice, and that's really the core of our practice. This is what the Buddha was talking about in this instance. So the other three are jnana samvara. Jnana samvara means with wisdom. Through the practice of mindfulness, there comes about wisdom that the things that you thought were desirable are by no means beneficial or conducive to happiness. And through that knowledge, the desire evaporates. So you guard as a result. Your senses are naturally guarded. This is the state of an enlightened being. Khanti samvara means suppose you want something or you want to do something, but you're patient and you know that desire is there, but you're determined to wait it out patiently. And virya samvara means you with strength of will, you force yourself not to do something that you want to do or to do something that you don't want to do and so on. But sati samvara is what the Buddha is really talking about here. And the words that he uses are, when you see something, he says, nanimita gahi nanubhyanjana gahi. When you see or hear or smell or taste or feel or think, these words are an important part of mindfulness, and they're something that is not well understood in meditation circles. It's a common mistake people make. Nanimita gahi means to not grasp at the signs. Nanubhyanjana gahi, to not grasp at the particulars. It's a common question we get from meditators about how in-depth they should go with an object, how much they should understand about the details of the object. Often there's a criticism of the practice that we undertake, the noting practice, and to note things just as seeing no matter what you see. The question that's often asked is how then can you understand the intricate details of the experience? And this question is based on a misunderstanding that somehow there's some benefit in understanding the details, where the Buddha's explicit instruction through guarding through mindfulness is to not grasp, not get caught up in the details. The signs means the mental recognition that comes from it. When you see a man or you see a woman, the sign of the man, the sign of a woman. When you see a sign of something delicious, there's a sign, there's a conceiving, a recognition that's called nimitta in Pali. And he says, you don't grasp after this. A meditator should not grasp after the signs. Seeing is just seeing, hearing is just hearing, experience is just what it is. And this is what we accomplish through the practice of noting. When you say to yourself, seeing, or hearing. This is what we hear about in the Bahya Sutta, when the Buddha says, Dite dita matang bhavisati, let seeing just be seeing, let hearing just be hearing. And his instruction his explanation is that as a result of this, the potential for the arising of desire and aversion is cut off. Those emotions of liking something, disliking something, identifying, all of that requires a delving in the particulars. Seeing as seeing has no room for extrapolation. It has no room for attachment because there is no extrapolation. And yet it's the reality of the experience. So you don't actually lose anything when you stay at seeing as just seeing. You lose something when you delve into the details. This is the idea of guarding the senses. You're not actually guarding. With mindfulness, you're not actually guarding. Again, stopping yourself from seeing or stopping yourself, going away so that you don't hear loud noises. Mindfulness means to acknowledge and experience and face the experiences just as they are. This is really the guarding of the senses. The second one, bhojane matanyuta, might be surprising for people who are not familiar with intensive meditation practice. Life in the world is full of so many triggers for desire and aversion. But for someone engaged in intensive meditation, the biggest one is going to be the indulgence in eating. Because our daily life as an intensive meditator is walking and sitting is simply the practice of mindfulness. The only thing to break us out of that has any real strong potential for the arising of craving is food. So it makes sense that this is an important part, an integral part of our practice. Bhojane matanyuta, it's translated as moderation, so the idea of not eating too much and not eating too little, but that's really just a term. What it really means is to eat for the right reasons. And the Buddha says explicitly, he reminds us of this reflection that we undertake. Pati sankha yoniso pindapatang pati sevami ne vadavaya, and so on. We chant this every day in our chanting, and we chant it before we eat as a reminder. Not to eat for entertainment, not to eat for not to eat for intoxication, not to eat for fattening up or beautification, not thinking, oh, if I eat this I'll look nicer or I'll be a fuller form, maybe you feel like you're too thin, or that sort of thing. But just eating to continue to live. It doesn't really mean moderation, it means eating just enough to continue your work. If you eat too little, obviously it's hard to practice meditation. So there is a middle way. That's not exactly about moderation, it's about just enough. The Buddha in the Majjhima Nikaya said, I only eat one meal a day. You also, and he said, I'm able to live and able to practice in health and in peace. And he recommended for the monks to do the same. So we try our best to eat just as much as we need. There's even advice to eat a little bit less than would make you full. And I think the idea is that it takes some time for you to know that you're full. If you eat until you're full, then you've actually eaten until you're overfull, because by the time all of the food gets to the digestion system, you've already eaten too much. Because it takes time for you to know, for your body to tell you how much that you've eaten enough. So the recommendation is to eat a little bit less than you need, 4 or 5 mouthfuls less than to be full, and then stop there. It's just one of the very practical aspects of a meditation course. When someone undertakes intensive meditation, to be careful with food, because it's the only thing that's going to take you away from your practice. And you'll see over the days, day in and day out, how it affects your practice if you eat too much and eat too little. And the third one, dedication to wakefulness. This one relates mostly to quantity of the practice. So there's a question of quality over quantity. And you can see from this that both are important. The quality is the guarding of the senses. Walking and sitting hour after hour is of no value if your senses are not guarded, if you're not facing the core essence of experience at the eye, at the ear, at the nose, at the tongue, at the body, at the mind. But by the same token, practicing a few hours a day and then letting yourself go the rest is of no value either. So in this section, the Buddha says something else that's very interesting. He says a meditator practices from morning to night. Daytime lasts from 6 a.m. till 6 p.m. and you're doing walking and sitting in alternation. It's an example of where we see the role that walking meditation plays. It is a question that sometimes comes up as to whether walking meditation is something the Buddha taught, how important is it? It's very common for someone to first come and meditate in our tradition and say they are only doing sitting, and to have no expectation of being pushed to do walking, thinking sitting is enough, why should I do walking? But the Buddha very clearly and very explicitly stated that the way to practice is walking and sitting in alternation. So if there was any doubt or confusion about why we do this, we have it on very good authority. Of course, there's reasons, and the Buddha gives reasons why walking meditation is great, but there's no sense that the Buddha said you should sit all day or just practice sitting meditation, that meditation is the practice of sitting or something like that. And apart from that, that's not all. 6 a.m. till 6 p.m., I mean approximately, that's the daytime, half of the day, half of the 24-hour period, half of the day cycle is daytime, and that should be done in walking and sitting. Now the night, you can split the night half into three parts. And so it's not that you sleep, of course, for 12 hours. You separate it into three parts, and the first part, well, guess what? You do walking and sitting in alternation. The second part, which in modern explanation would be about 4 hours, that's when you lie down. And the Buddha says you lie down mindfully. He doesn't say you go to sleep, and this is really valuable advice. A meditator intent on enlightenment should never go to sleep. They should lie down mindfully and be intent that after 4 hours or 4 or 5 hours if you're pushing it, they should be intent that after that amount of time they're going to get up and start practicing again. And what that means is most likely you will fall asleep, but you're never dedicated to sleeping. You're dedicated to wakefulness. Jagariyang anuyuto. And then after you wake up after the second, guess what? You've got another 4 hours, again walking and sitting. So basically, the ideal practice would be walking and sitting constantly. Of course, there's timeouts for, he doesn't mention this, but there will be, of course, timeouts for eating, timeouts for meeting with your teacher, timeouts for washroom, for shower, for sweeping, and that sort of thing. But all of those are really inconsequential. The majority of it is practicing walking and sitting in alternation. So this kind of dedicated meditation practice is very much endorsed by the Buddha, and it's a part of the Apannaka Patipadā. And really that's all you need, it's very simple. Here you have a teaching that the Buddha said is flawless. There's so many things that we might say are missing. Well, what about this? Well, what about that? And on reflection, you can see that it really is that simple. There's not a lot that you have to do, not a lot that you have to know. The knowledge, the Buddha said, all you need to know as far as learning, really need as far as learning for practice, is that nothing is worth clinging to. He said, if you know that, you have enough to begin to practice. And if you practice these three things, this is a perfectly well-rounded practice called the Apannaka Patipadā. A really useful teaching in terms of how simple it is, how easy it is to share with others, and if someone's getting worried about too many details, you can say, look, all you need is these three things. If you're dedicated to these three, you're on the right path. So that's the Apannaka Patipadā, and that's the Dhamma for today.